Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Heavy Branches. I'm Jacob.
And I'm Tanner.
And I'm Jacob.
And we're so excited to be back. It's been a minute. It's been a little bit. Tanner, how have you been during our brief intermission?
I've been pretty good. I'm trying to remember some of the things that have gone on. The last time we were together and recorded, we were actually at Jacob Cabe's, and I got to preach part of a revival. So since then...
Revival number 2, right? Second one you've done?
Yeah.
Or second one you've been a part of?
I think so.
Yeah, because we did one together.
Yeah. And then mainly just been head down at work at Glen Estee, preaching more. And we did go to the CRA conference, and the theme was the anvil of God's Word, I think is actually how it was worded. But it was a good conference. I'm glad we got to be there, got to fellowship with some of our preacher friends and some of our teachers, and very thankful for the connections that we've been able to make through school and stuff. And but I've been pretty good. How have you all been?
I'm doing good. I was looking at my calendar, and since the last time we recorded, we had a module. Me and Jacob went to the National Prayer Clinic, and we went to the CRA Bible Conference. So there's a lot that's happened since then.
And that's a big part of the reason why we kind of had a few weeks there where nothing got put out, because we were in Grundy, Virginia for the prayer clinic, and then we were all in Ohio for the Bible conference, and there wasn't really much time to fit in to worry about recording. We were hanging out with people and enjoying the conference. So, but yeah, it's been good.
But now we're back.
Yes.
We're back with another top 5. And this week's this one might be one that a lot of people have comments on, but we're going with top 5 church potluck foods. So, Cabe, why don't you kick us off, and then I'll go, and then Jacob will go last.
Before he kicks us off with this, does desserts count in this, or is this just like regular food?
I think desserts count.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is close and dear to my heart. I have been to so many church potlucks, and I love them probably more than most. And so my list, it starts with pretty easy. This is the first thing I'm grabbing if I see it at a potluck: hash brown casserole. Especially if it's got those little bits of cereal on top. Like I think they're what's it called? They're not frosted flakes, just the corn flakes on top. Have you ever had that?
I don't think I've had it on hash brown casserole.
Okay. I always thought that was potato chips. Is that cereal?
Yes. Number 1, hash brown casserole, specifically with those flakes on top. Second, I have to go with a dessert, banana pudding. I don't know. Older people do not make anything better than banana pudding. So that's number 2.
What is it?
Pudding? Banana pudding?
Pudding?
Pudding, same thing. So banana pudding. Now you have me saying pudding. That's weird. Number 3.
You're the one that
it's
said
okay. Number 3, fried chicken. It's something that's underrated because it's at every potluck, but that's number 3, fried chicken. Number 4 is, this is maybe be when you guys won't like, is a roll, like a Sister Schubert roll, like those really soft dinner rolls. I'm always going to eat them. 5, chicken and dumplings. They're not at everyone, but when they're at a potluck, I will eat them. Good, bad, flat, big, I'll eat them. So that's my top 5.
All right. I don't have any specific critiques of that list. I'm just surprised.
Well, you're not here to critique my list. You're here to tell your own list.
I can critique if I want to, but I found nothing of substantial.
Hash brown casserole being on it isn't bad. I just wouldn't have expected like a random side item to be number 1.
Every time I'm going for it.
I didn't even put mine in order. I think this is just a random top 5, but I'm gonna start with cheese ball. I love a good cheese ball anytime, and
like
it seems like
cream cheese.
It seems like every time I'm at some kind of potluck, there's a cheese ball somewhere.
That's
so
fair.
that's one of them. I went with baked chicken because at the church we grew up, actually one of our friends, Dawson, his grandma Patsy, always had Patsy's Chicken. That's what it was
Who,
called.
who brought the good corn?
The good corn, that was normally my grandparents, Monterey and John, I
'Cause
think.
that's on my list.
The cream corn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always good. That didn't make my list, honestly, because I didn't think about it. But Patsy's Chicken, or just like baked breaded chicken, that's up there. Mashed potatoes. I'm a good big mashed potatoes guy. Anytime as long as it's like filled with butter and it's super unhealthy. Like
It's just easy to mess up mashed potatoes. I've had some really watery potatoes in the last couple of years, and so I just
fair enough.
couldn't
Fair
put it
enough.
up there.
We actually had a chili potluck last year.
Oh, you stole me.
And that has become one of my favorites at potluck in general is chili, but a chili potluck specifically where you get to try all the different chilies. That's always nice. And then an unusual one that I was made aware of while preaching at your home church, Morton's Gap, or not preaching, but being down there for your ordination, is the homemade ice cream. I had never experienced a potluck with that before, and that was an excellent adventure to say the least. So that's my top 5: cheese ball, baked chicken, mashed potatoes, chili, and homemade ice cream.
They really blessed me for the ordinary. They were like, you know what Jacob would like? A bunch of homemade ice cream.
And it wasn't just like your typical homemade vanilla and chocolate ice cream. There was like a cherry cordial type stuff. There was a sherbet. What was there
there
was
a
a
peach one too,
butter.
wasn't
there?
There was a butter pecan that was
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, homemade butter pecan.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
So, Tanner, normally I have some argumentation with your list. Normally, me and you do not correlate, but you've actually done very well.
Hey, give me a handshake.
I don't love the mashed potatoes being on there. I'm not a big mashed potatoes guy, but like
Fair enough.
everything else was fantastic. You stole my number one,
Okay.
which is the chili.
Okay.
I love a chili cook-off at a church. I was filling in preaching at a church one time up in Indiana, and after I got done preaching that Sunday, they were having a chili cook-off right after service, and they invited me to stay. And so I took them up on it, of course. And deer meat chili, white chicken chili, chicken tortilla soup, just all kinds of different chili, and it was all so good.
Yeah.
Of course, you have it with peanut butter sandwiches, and you dip the peanut butter sandwich in the chili.
Absolutely.
That can't be disputed around here.
I don't want to get off topic, but do you guys? My wife likes to put corn syrup and peanut butter together and dip it in her chili. Is that a normal thing?
I have never heard
I've
of that.
never heard
in
of
my
it
life.
either.
I was like, what are you doing?
I
I've heard-
don't even know what corn syrup is.
It's just sugar, pretty much.
Okay, so no.
It's just a liquid sugar.
Like-
I do peanut butter crackers, like with Townhouse crackers, and then I'll just make my own little peanut butter sandwich with the crackers, or I'll just do a peanut butter sandwich with white bread.
Okay. I don't want to get off topic. I just,
Oh, that's on topic.
yeah.
Anyway.
So chili as a whole is number one. But that includes anything in a chili cook-off.
Yeah.
That's just the best. Number 2, I really struggled with what dessert to go with, but I love a good apple pie with vanilla ice cream, of course.
Fair enough.
That's hard to overtake. I mentioned it during your list, Tanner, but your grandparents, I guess it's your grandparents' corn.
I believe it's John and Monterey's corn, yes.
Somebody at the Sherman Church of Christ has been bringing the same exact corn recipe to our potluck since I was little, and it's so sweet, and it's farm grown. It's not frozen. It's so good. And then I'm not just trying to steal your list, but the baked chicken, Patsy's Chicken. I mean,
Gas
it's,
every time.
It never misses. So good. Number 5, I might go with the good creamy mac and cheese.
That's a good
That's
one.
valid.
I know this is a hot take, but I don't love when it's real stringy cheese and like dry. I want it to be really milky and creamy. So that's my stipulation with that.
I do have one honorable mention. Sausage balls. It couldn't
Ooh,
make
that is a good
that
one.
couldn't
Yeah.
make the list, but it was like if it's there, I'm
That's
eating
more
it.
of like a men's prayer breakfast
Fair enough.
type thing,
I'm
but
eating it 100% of the
yeah,
time though.
that's fair.
Let me throw in one honorable mention too, and I'll be done totally with my list. It's buffalo chicken dip. That's always a good
Yeah.
finger food there at the potluck.
Yep, agreed. Well done, gentlemen.
You got an honorable mention?
I don't, off the top of my head. I could make fun of Jason Anderson and talk about Stouffer's lasagna, but I'll leave that for another time. We are in Acts chapter 23. It's been a little while, but we're going to pick right back up where we left off. Just as a reminder, as we go through these chapters, we're just looking at key thoughts that we want to bring out from the chapter. And our primary focus with the podcast, our hope is that through going through the scriptures and all together, we can grow so that we can better bear fruit for the kingdom. And so that's kind of our focus as we go down through this. But as we get into chapter 23 of Acts, I do have a verse 1 for this episode. Are we surprised?
Nope.
No.
By any means?
Not one
okay.
bit.
Nope.
So
Yeah, actually a little bit, because you kind of taken a break from that.
it's pretty spotty.
Like
it's pretty
it
spotty.
was really consistent for
I don't-
several months in a row, and then you deserted it for a while. So
That's
I am
true.
a little surprised, to be honest.
Well, sometimes it can't happen. I don't want to stretch too far with things. I don't want to stretch at all, actually. But
That applies in many areas.
yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Okay. I'm reading from the Legacy Standard Bible today.
Switching it up on us. We have been 1995 NASB through and through on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm still preaching from the NASB right now. I'm just kind of using it as a tool and seeing how I like it, seeing how good the translation actually is. So for right now,
it reads very similar to the 1995 NASB, so I guess I'll tolerate it.
But the opening verse, it says, "Now Paul, looking intently at the Sanhedrin, said, 'Brothers, I have lived my life in all good conscience before God up to this day.'" Now, before I get into this any further, we are going to address this a couple different times over the next few chapters, but the final discussion about this will be when we actually get to Acts chapter 26, and that's where we'll be able to really break this whole topic down of a good conscience or sincerity. But it's very interesting for us to consider that Paul at one point was a Pharisee who was bound and determined to murder Christians.
Right.
And he is saying in this statement, "I have lived my life in all good conscience before God up to this day." So he's talking about his whole life. But what we'll find later on is that he is not saying that his good conscience and his sincerity when he was a Pharisee before he became a Christian made him right with God.
Yeah.
And that is an important fact that we will continue to kind of touch on. But what I wanted to bring up here, as this topic is originally brought up here in 23, is the question, is this all we need, a good conscience or being sincere? And what I'll say is this: it only matters, sincerity or a good conscience, it only matters if it aligns with the will of God. And like I said, we're going to address that more as we get into these other chapters, but I do want to read from 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter chapter 3. Some of you know where I'm going with this. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 21 and 22. It says, "Corresponding to that, baptism now saves you, not the removal of dirt from the flesh, but an appeal of a good conscience to God through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who is at the right hand of God, having gone into heaven after angels and authorities and powers had been subjected to him." And so notice, Peter uses the same phrasing there, a good conscience, but it is not until we have aligned ourselves with the will of God that the good conscience matters. The good conscience has to align itself with God's will for our lives.
So basically what you're saying is you can be sincere without being right, but you
Yes.
can't be right without being sincere.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because if you're just aligned with the truth, but your heart doesn't change, then you aren't truly aligned with the truth.
Yeah, we have these discussions all the time about how people dive into the scriptures and are very knowledgeable, but the knowledge they have in their head it does not translate at all into the way that they live their lives. And so we have to be very careful about our knowledge of the will of God translating into a sincere heart for living like Jesus, and loving God and loving people. But on the other side of the coin, sincerity in just any opinion or sincerity in any religion does not cut it.
Well, that would be universalism, right?
Yeah.
If it was, that would be the idea of you can pick whatever religion you want, you can pick whatever denomination you want, as long as you're faithful and sincere to whatever your belief sect is, and then that path will lead to God.
And so, while it isn't directly addressed yet in Acts 23, the reason I bring out that Peter passage is it points out that a good conscience has to align with obedience to the gospel for it to mean anything.
So, go ahead, sorry.
That makes sense, because if that was the case, that all you needed was a good conscience, we probably mentioned this before, but Paul, he wouldn't have needed to be baptized. He wouldn't need to be a Christian, because he truly thought what he was doing was right when he was a Pharisee. And so if he was just a good conscience, that's the only thing that matters, and that doesn't matter where the truth is, and there's no such thing as truth, then he would have been fine. But he wasn't. He was called to change and to live a lifestyle as a Christian.
And that was really exposed that will be more exposed in
we'll
Acts
talk about it
26. The next thing we see kind of going down is in verse 3 it says, "Then Paul said to him, 'God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Do you sit to try me according to the law, and in violation of the law order me to be struck?'" And this phrase "whitewashed wall," I know Cabe has a thought or two about that.
No, I just think it's hilarious. I think isn't he calling them hypocrites? He's calling them, you're saying, holding me to a law that you're not keeping yourself. The reason that I laughed a little bit, because I'm thinking, if I am talking to someone and get angry, how funny would it be just to pull out this one and be like, "You are a whitewashed wall," because it makes no sense in our context today. But yeah, it's super cool that he calls out here their hypocrisy, saying you are telling me that I must keep this, but you're not keeping it themselves. Yeah, I like that.
We also see, moving on, as Paul begins to make his defense here before the Sanhedrin. He's been arrested. He's before the Sanhedrin, and they're questioning him, and he begins by bringing up the fact that he is a Pharisee and a son of Pharisees, and that he is on trial for the hope and resurrection of the dead. And, that with the Sadducees there who did not believe in resurrection, that caused quite a stir. Go ahead.
They said, that is not why they said that he's there on trial. They're having him on trial for going against the law and then stirring up, and then eventually when they got to the Roman trial, it was because he stirred up the Jews. I kept saying riots and that riot after riot. But then he's saying, I'm not here because I have broke the law. I am here because there's a hope in Christ, and Christ rose from the dead. And so if Christ didn't raise from the dead, he wouldn't be there on trial. And so he just goes back and emphasizes that I am here because Jesus rose. Even though they didn't believe in resurrection, like you said, that stirred them up a bit. But that's why he's there, not because he broke any Jewish law, but because of Jesus.
And it's more than just the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but the belief that there will be a resurrection of all people, and we'll see that in some of the later chapters as well. But it is important to notice, like Gabe said, why he knows he is there, and it is because of what he has believed, and that is confirmed here in verse 11 by what Jesus says in verse 11. It says, "But on that very night the Lord stood at his side and said, 'Take courage, for as you have solemnly borne witness to my cause at Jerusalem, so you must bear witness at Rome also.'" And so Jesus is testifying on behalf of Paul here to him, saying, "You have stood your ground. You have testified about me, and the hope and the hope that you have in the resurrection to come. You've testified about that, and because you've done it at Jerusalem, I promise you will also do it at Rome." And so this is a promise to Paul that his work was not complete, and it would not be complete until he was a witness in Rome for the same cause. I just think it's very important that we notice these times when Jesus is continuing to be with Paul, even when he's on trial, even when he's struggling. And it's important for us because we know we can go to God's Word whenever we're struggling and find the answers, find the encouragement to keep going.
Well, that's part of the promise of the Great Commission, isn't it?
Yes.
That Paul is there witnessing, trying to evangelize and spread the gospel, spread the news that Jesus rose from the dead. And Jesus told, back in Matthew 28, Jesus told the disciples there that as they're going out carrying on the Great Commission, he would be with them to the end. And we see an example of that here where he's with Paul.
Yeah. And I love the thought that, even though it didn't matter what's going on in Paul's life and in the mission, how bad it's going, how much he's in prison, how much that he's being threatened to be beat, he focuses on the hope that's found in the future in Christ. He always goes back to the resurrection, the hope of Jesus, and that he's with him. I think that's super cool.
Well, the Jews are not happy with him by any means, and
They never are.
they begin to seek to kill him, in many ways very reminiscent of them seeking and trying to kill Jesus.
I don't want to cut you off, but they say that they would not eat or drink till they kill Paul. You have to really hate a person to not eat a meal until he's dead. I don't know if they took this literally or not. They probably did for a time. But you have to really, I don't know about you, Tanner, but I would have to be real angry to miss a meal because of someone else's actions towards me.
Well, I think our top fives being mostly food speak to the fact that we don't go very often without a meal.
No, we don't miss them.
Yeah,
So
you can't accuse us of that.
yeah. The other thing with this verse 12 that I think is very important to point out is that they are Jewish. They are dedicated to the law.
Mhm.
And they know that one of the first commandments that God gives in 10 Commandments is thou shalt not murder. They know that. But just like when they were angry with Jesus, they are compromising what they know to be right out of hatred. And I bring this up because it is so commonly assumed today in the church, in the world, in school, whatever it might be, that people just know that murder is wrong. But I think there is a very significant correlation to the fact that the 10 Commandments no longer are posted in the schools. And we wonder why things like school shootings have increased. We wonder why things like suicide has increased. And I don't want this to sound cruel by any means, because I I hate the fact that those things are going on, but there is a significant correlation to the fact that we have become lax in emphasizing the sacredness of life. We have become lax in emphasizing the wrongness of murder to the point that it has become more relevant, or not more relevant, but more prevalent. That's the word I'm looking for. It has become more common in the world, at least in America. I mean, we wonder why it's a thought so commonly on people's minds. We wonder why when somebody gets angry, one of the first things they say sometimes is something like, I'm going to kill you, or something like that. And it's because we have lost our understanding of how sacred life is. And we cannot let things like this in Scripture pass idly by without addressing the fact that murder is wrong, life is sacred, and we must stick up for it.
And they ignored the sake of truth because of their own personal feelings and hatred towards Paul. It wasn't to keep the law. It wasn't to please God. It was because they wanted to kill Paul because they were upsetting them. It wasn't because they were sincere. It was because of their own personal gain and interest against Paul. They lost track, for sure.
So, as the chapter kind of wraps up, it's all about how Paul is brought to Caesarea, and he's getting ready to stand trial before Felix, the governor. And so that's where we'll pick up moving forward. Do you all have anything else from this chapter 23 that you'd like to address?
Nope, I don't think so. I don't have anything.
I'll throw the question out there. What do you think we should do as the church to try to bring back, I don't know if respect is the right word or appreciation, but this whole matter we've been talking about with the sanctity of life and how it's seemingly dropped off. Do you think this is a problem in the church, or do you think this is a problem more just people in our culture and in our world are losing that?
I think there's a lot of churches that do a lot of things recognizing the sanctity of life. I mean, I know the church I'm at for years now has done a Sanctity of Life Sunday, and remembering basically it was a recognition of the Roe v. Wade thing, allowing abortions, and even since it's been removed, we've still considered the sanctity of life on that day. And I know other churches have done that. I think the key thing that I feel like has been missed is from a youth standpoint.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Because I feel like this isn't 100% the case, but that the youth standpoint is where a lot of the things that I mentioned are occurring, like the school shootings and the suicides and stuff. I think from a youth standpoint, maybe there is something we have to do a better job of getting our youth to understand their value as a human being, and the value of everybody else around them as human beings.
And if they don't understand that they are valued by God, that they're created in the image of God, that doesn't just affect, killing other people, because that's an extreme case that we see, but it's also, the way they see themselves, anxiety and depression and self-harm. If you don't see yourself as something that is, created in the image of God, something that's of value, then you're not going to treat yourself or think of yourself in a very high manner. And I think that's what we see with a lot of our youth, is they don't understand how precious life is, and especially their own life. And if they're not going to get that by the people around them, that they're special, they need it, that they're created by a holy and loving God, then they've got to get it from the church.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I've heard recently, and I agree with it, that the Bible is more about God than it is about us. But when we understand God and who He is and what His nature is, we will then understand the value that we have, because that God loved us, created us, sent His Son to die for us, even though we didn't deserve it. And so the existence of God and who God is by nature and what He's done is the starting point, but that leads us into being able to really understand who we are as human beings created in His image.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I think that wraps us up on 23. In terms of bearing fruit, I think what we just talked about is super significant in that, helping people to understand who God is, and by helping them understand who God is, we can grow in our understanding of who we are and what our purpose is in life here. And that's super significant, not just with children, but with all people, especially people outside of Christ today that don't know the Lord. And
there's a lot of people that don't think that there are those around them that care for them. I think that's a big problem, and because the amount of mental health is skyrocketing each year we get. And I was thinking about it this week. The church is so important in the lives of those that do not think themselves of value. Because if someone does not see themselves as being able to be loved, the church is to be there to say you are loved not only by God, but by us, that you have a value. And the way you can find that is not by drugs or alcohol, but you find it by coming to the church and being around people who truly care about you. And I think if more people would first, the church, be open and loving to those kind of people, but also realize that there are those in this life that will love you no matter what you're going through. And I was thinking about that. The church has to be there for those that do not see themselves as worth it.
It's definitely an area of need in ministry, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know of a community that doesn't have that group of people that needs to be reached. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's wrap up here with our song of the week. I believe, Jacob Simpson, it is your turn to give us our song of the week.
Song of the week. This one is, I would be really surprised if anyone knew this song. So the way I found this is I have a playlist on Spotify with some Christian songs that I like. And Spotify does this thing called, I think it's called Smart Shuffle, where when you go through your playlist and it's done, it will play songs similar to the ones you have on your playlist. So that's how I found this song. But it's called Water Grave by Chosen Road is who it's out under on Spotify. And it's kind of about baptism. And a couple of the lines that I like from the song I'll share with you is, so it says, "The man I used to be has been crucified, and the death of this man is a final way of revealing, in a spiritual way, to live I had to die." And I really, the whole song I think is good, but that line really shows, in baptism, when we decide that we're becoming a Christian and that we're repenting of our old ways and living a life towards God, that really shows that old man had to die in order for us to spiritually live. And that lyric really just resonates with me, and so that's my choice for Song of the Week.
And I really like it because it's bluegrassy and folky.
It is. It's very folky.
It's mountainy, which is good.
Mount Carmel would love it.
They would absolutely adore it, for sure.
So that's Song of the Week for me.
I like it.
Water Grave is, Water Grave.
Water Grave.
Yeah, check that out. I've listened to it once earlier.
Like 45 minutes ago.
I don't know how well it would translate into worship, a worship song led in the church, like
not in Cincinnati,
it is,
but on the mountain it would.
But
be.
it
maybe
is
a special.
But
Maybe a
it
special.
would probably be a good special. It's definitely a good personal worship time song, and I like it. It's cool.
I know me and Jacob came back from Grundy. If you know where Grundy is, it's up there. And we rolled down all of our windows and just blared this song, screaming it. Or at least I was, and it was fantastic.
It was a good time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We thank you for listening. Give us your thoughts on our top 5 and what your top 5 church potluck foods would be. And as always, go bear fruit and so prove to be one of Jesus' disciples.